back to the series. This is a first look at the Novastar LCT software. Basically, just me walking through it today, familiarizing ourselves with the software, what it can do, what we're going to be asking of it through this series. We'll also be looking at the Smart LCT software, but that'll be in a following video. So basically, when you load up the application, this is what you load into first of all. This is the main page. There are a couple of sections that do an array of different parts. So you have the main status bar at the top, then the main modules that we will be looking into, how many control systems you have connected, other devices. These might be light sensors. These are Novastars themselves. These may be other things like media players, light sensors. You can also then get a list of all the things that are connected through here, and then monitoring information. So when you do have a card connected, you will be able to see the status of sending cards, receiving cards, power, and other features like this. So if we go into it, first of all, there's many things you can do. So reconnecting Novastars, brightness. These are basically here. The settings are this row of settings. Tools, you have additional tools for calibration, video control, matching LED batches, but we're going to first have a look into the users. So this is how you get the functionality when you have Novastars connected. At the moment we don't have any Novastars connected. So if you did have a Novastar connected, you would go into the advanced user login. So if you go here, the password for this is 666 login. As you can see, it's added a couple more things to our settings here. So now we have calibration and screen configuration. We also have a video on the drop down. Now the cloud monitoring has been moved over. So this is where you would set up your screen once you have a screen connected. There's also brightness, calibration, screen control, as we saw before. But for the purposes of this, because we don't have a Novastar connected at the moment, let's log out of the advanced user and we'll go into the demonstration mode. So basically, demonstration allows you to act as if you did have a Novastar connected without actually connecting a Novastar. So the password for this one is 888. They'll both be in the description, those passwords. So now you can see we have the same as we had when we were connected to the advanced user login, the screen configuration, which has been added. But now it says one control system connected. If we have a look here, it'll say what port it's connected to. So COM port 99, and it's an MCRL4K. Number of devices 2, so it can say this is 2 of those connected, and then serial number, you have some more information there. As you can see, then it gives you some small amount of information on the bottom here. So the the sending card status is green, receiving card status green, and the temperature is in the green also. So if we do take a look at some of these settings for a moment, once you do have your screen connected, you can watch this in real time change from the software. So you can change your brightness as you would like. From the brightness, you can go from grayscale to contrast. Also, what we'll be discussing in further videos is the automatic adjustment. So when you have a ambient light sensor connected, this is where you will come. You go through the setup wizard, and you can then set it to change with the day and the night cycles, and it will automatically change. One thing to note when we are changing things on the Novastar software is if you do make any changes, some of them are in real time. So the brightness, for instance, will change in real time on your screen, but then you always have to save to hardware. Very important step there to save to hardware. Let's leave it at 100% just for argument's sake. And then if we did have something connected, we would do save to hardware, and it would say save brightness parameters, and that's great. So there's a couple of other things here. One of the things I do want to show you in this first video is the monitoring. So this is, if you did have any faults on your screen, this is where you could come. Depending on what type of screen you will have more of these options available, because as you can see they're not available here. That just means that the modules that we have, the LED screen that we have, does not support monitoring for these functions. So it doesn't have a monitoring card, so it can't do smoke, fan speed, power, that sort of stuff. But the better screens you buy, the more functionality it has, that they will show up in this section here. So you can see our demo screen here has the three that we've already mentioned. So you have the sending card status, the receiving card status, and the temperature status. So we can go in, we can see one's connected, that's still on a COM port 1, that's the port we're connected to the NovaStar on. And then this is the one module that we have connected, or the one NovaStar that we have connected there. As you can see, we have 4x2 screen connected. These are the receiving cards. Yes, there. So you can see as you hover over, it gives you some information. So sending card 1, port 1, receiving card 4. So it's 3, 2, 1, and then you can see the positions of those as well. And if you go onto the temperature, it gives you the live temperature. These will also change with this scale here. So you can see if it gets into the red, so if it goes above about 70, there's orange, red, the status here will change to red and tell you that there is an error, and these will show up on the scale here as hot as they are. So that's just a little bit to start off with, just in case you are having any issues with your current screens. You can see here, this might give you a bit more insight into the screens to tell you they're running too hot or whatever it might be, to solve any of your problems. So that's kind of mostly the basics of the top bar here. It's also, if you go into screen control, which is this one here, you can do some quick things. So black out the whole screen, freeze the screen on the current image it's on, so if it's playing a video, keep it normal, or other tests, so you can go all green, blue, white. So if you have some pixel issues, the red's not working, white's not working, sorry, not red, but the RGB is not working correctly, you can send the self-test signal and get some more information. So that's the brightness, screen control, and monitoring. Let's go into the screen configuration now. So this is one of the biggest parts of setting up the screens themselves. So as you can see, because we are in the demo at the moment, we're still connected on COM port 99. If you can drop down, that's the only one we've got. If you did have more NovaStars connected, you could go through and select from this drop down of the multiple NovaStars. So if you go to next, it'll take a second, and then we will be opened up into the screen configuration page. It does look a bit daunting to start with, but this, if you go through it slowly, we'll be able to see, break down and see what we've got to work with here. So if we start at the top here, display mode, this is the whole page here for the display. As you can see, sending card unknown, the graphic output, so what it's receiving is 1920 by 1080, so that's the video being put in. Input, so you see we go, the source is HDMI, so this is what, if you had your NovaStar plugged up and you were going in through the HDMI port, this is where the settings would come to. So you can see that it's running off a HDMI, it's 1920 1080, and the refresh rate is at 60 Hz. You can change these, but I would usually leave them the same as what it defaults to, because that's what it is seeing from the sending box. So the media input, that's what this is coming up as. So if this was incorrect, I would go through and on your sending box try and change the resolution, as opposed to changing the resolution on the NovaStar itself, because then you'll have a mismatch of resolutions. You can also enable low latency, so this is basically for film and TV. So if you have a situation where you need to be within a couple of milliseconds, this does take more processing power, I believe, but it does speed up the latency between your video and the output to the screen. Then if you come down to redundancy here, this is basically your ports that you are using for backup. So you will have multiple ports that you can use on the NovaStar. So say if you have 4 ports, you can run some through the one side of the screen and then ones in the other side of the screen, and say if the first line was broken or a fault on the signal cable, the backup line, which you're running through the other side of the screen, then would pick it up and you should not lose any signal. So that's the display mode section here. It looks a bit daunting, but there's not too much you have to change here, apart from the backups. Usually this stuff will be set when just by plugging in your input, and then obviously the latency if you're doing stuff that requires very precise timings. If we then move on to the receiving card, this is basically your module or cabinet, the specification for that. So you can see the size and width of the pixels here. So this is a 32 by 16 screen. So the pixel width is 32 pixels across and 16 pixels high on this cabinet. You can change this manually, but what we would usually do, because the receiving card here, so the receiving card, the receiving card holds this information. So when it comes from the supplier, or if you're working on a new screen that you haven't worked on before, if you do read from receiving card, it'll ask you where you want to receive from. So we want to receive from the first sending card, number one. Number 1 is the first card that is connected to the NovaStar. You go OK, yes, and then see it pulls up all the new information. So as you can see, it's now pulled in the information that the demo is connected to. So yeah, 128 by 128. That's quite a common to have them square. You can also get them rectangular, which that's maybe double on the height, something like that. But now this is the accurate information for the cabinet you are currently connected to. So when you come into this page, usually you'll be reading from receiving card. Then you have the most current information. The module information, this is basically the chip that the cabinet has inside it. So basically it'll tell you information about the cabinet itself, data groups, horizontal, the chip number, and then the size. But if you come to read from receiving card, you can change these parameters, but usually we'll leave these the same. Once you read it from the card, you know you're working on the module and the specification that the screen is currently set at, and that will usually get you through. As I said, make sure you're constantly saving. So you'll change it if you change anything in here, then send to receiving card and save. So that'll save any of the changes that you've made to the cabinet. Because if you exit out of this without saving, it won't save any of the information. Once you've turned the NovaStar off and back on, so if you power cycled it, it will go back to the before state. So we'll do that, send to receiving card. So you basically read the information. Say if your first cabinet was showing different information to the rest of the cabinets, you would read from cabinet 1 and then you would send to all cabinets. So that send to receiving cards sends it to all the receiving cards, and then all of your screen will be showing the same way. We'll save then. Same for information to hardware. And then we'll move on to screen configuration. This is the bread and butter of the software, really. So as you can see, as we saw from our monitoring pages on the previous pages, we still have the 4 by 2 screen that we have configured previous. This on this side here, you can see we have two NovaStars. So as I said, we have two MCRL 4Ks connected. So this is the first one and the second one. We're only using the first one for this screen at the moment, and port number 1 because we only need a small amount of capacity. So if we reset this, currently set, this one was set by the demo. So if we just go here to reset all, this will take out the configuration we've currently got. So as you can see from this is the basic information section, where we're going to do columns where we've got 4 columns and rows where we have 2. So say if we had a configuration which was one that I use quite often, it is 5 by 3. So you click away from that then, or enter, and it will bring up the new section for you. This is a very basic screen. We will go into, so this is a standard screen here. You can have complex screens, but that will not be covered in the scope of this video, but in future videos it definitely will be. So as you're setting up your screen, one thing to note is the current receiving card size. So this is the one which was currently set in our receiving card panel, 128 by 128. You can apply this to the entire row, or you can apply it to the entire column, so whichever one you're on, or apply to current port, so that will apply it to everything here. If this was a different value, so you had a different size screen, you would change these values, and then it would change it across things. So if we do set to entire, oh, so there we go. So if we set the screen like that, then we can do entire port. You can see, because we already had this set to 128, all the cards now are set to 128. And on the pop-up here, you can see the width also. It's not shown on the card, but it says height 128 and width 128. So depends on your configuration. This is looking from the front of the screen. So when you're looking at the face of the screen, this is where your S for start is and E for end. As we're going through, this will be the cards as this set up. Sender card 1, Ethernet port 1. Say if we were running 3 different feeds and we wanted to use card number 1, port 1, 2, and 3, you would go from 1 to 5 on that one, for instance, and you come on to port 2, and you do the same thing. You can click and drag or click the individual ones in the same way. So you can do that then. Highlight this, the doing for each port. So we'll say sending card 1, and it'll say port 2 there. So port 1 on that pop up there, port 2. So you can tell which ones they are from the pop up and the information that is currently on the card. If you're doing basic screens, a few cabinets by a few cabinets, 5 by 5, stuff like that, you won't really need too complex systems. As long as you know how your screen is currently wired, you can then go off this and program the software to match, really. So then, as we were saying before on the previous pages, you can read from hardware, which is basically getting the information off the cards which are current. So say before we did this, or we set this up, if we read it, it would pull down the current configuration, which should be, there we go, exactly the same as we had it before. And then say we did make a change again, so we go through this again. I've actually got a 5 by 3 screen, say for instance. Reset all the connections across the ports. I'm going to do the same as we had, so we start from this side. We're going to go across on port 1, second row on port 2 and port 3. All of them set to 128, which is exactly what they're meant to be. And then we'll send to hardware. So once you've done this, it'll say send in information to hardware. Sometimes it does take a while if you have larger screens, but this shouldn't take too long because we're only running the demo here. There you go, save information to hardware also. Take a second, it'll say information has been successfully saved. And here we are. So then I would also save as well. It literally just saved, but I like to do that just to make sure that everything is saved properly. So that's the basics of the software. If we close this down now, we've gone through the screen configuration. As you've seen, you can connect to the port. You have one player connected because we're in the demo at the moment, and we've gone through connecting up screens, how many columns, how many rows you got. This is corresponding to your screen. Then you can add from your ports on the NovaStar each individual connection that you want for your screen. Receiving card, we do the read from receiving card to get the current information, and then you can send that then to every other corresponding receiving card. And then the sending cards. Hello?
Your shams already?
Yeah, you can start without me.
Do you want sweet popcorn?
Solid.
Just salted.
Thank you. So, as you can see, if you do the read from receiving card, pulls down the current information for the receiving cards, 128 by 128 as for this example, and then you send a receiving cards to make sure all the receiving cards are set to the same settings. Go over to sending card. This is the incoming information, mostly dictated by the how the NovaStar is set up at the moment. Mostly done by default, and then you have the backups if that applies to you, and the low latency. That's mainly all for the screen configuration. We're just going over the basics today. Brightness, as I showed, you can do it manually or automatically if you have a ambient light sensor set up. Calibration we're not going to touch for today. Screen control, where you can just do the basics, blackout, screen and the like. And then the monitoring, which we covered. Basically, you can see the status of your current screen and how it's set up, which is very useful. So this is just going over the basics here in this video. I'm going to make a couple more videos on the topics, and any information that you specifically need, please leave a comment below and I will address those videos as the comments come in. Thank you.